They told me the night shift was easy. Stock the shelves. Sweep the aisles. Stay out of trouble. But nobody warned me about the rules. The bus wheezed like it was breathing its last breath as it dropped me off at the edge of Briar Glen, a place so quiet you could hear the wind arguing with itself. I stepped off into the evening chill, suitcase in hand, boots crunching on loose gravel. One flickering streetlight stood guard over the cracked sidewalk. There was no one around, except for the grocery store. Harlan's Market sat across the road, hunched like an old man with too many secrets. Its neon sign buzzed quietly in the dimming light, casting a tired red glow. Open 24 hours. I walked toward it, drawn in by the warm light leaking from its windows, unaware that I'd just stepped into something wrong. Inside, the store smelled of floor wax and overripe bananas. The overhead lights buzzed faintly. It looked normal. Quiet. A little too quiet. Like the building itself was holding its breath. A short, round woman appeared from behind the checkout counter. Her name tag said Marla, but her face said don't ask questions. "You Carl?" she asked, arms folded tight. "Yes, ma'am. First night." She didn't smile. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't." I chuckled, but she didn't. Just pointed down a hallway past the deli. "Break room's down there. Locker's yours now. Shift starts in 10. Read the rules." I raised an eyebrow. "Rules?" She turned away before answering. "They're posted on the wall. Follow him." The break room looked like time forgot it. Pale green walls. A humming soda machine. A microwave with something crusted to the inside that I didn't want to know about. And there, taped to the wall beside the lockers, was a faded white sheet. Harlan's Market, night shift rules. Read carefully. Do not ignore. Never clock in before 9:03 p.m. If a customer asks for help after 2 a.m., do not make eye contact. The aisle signs may change. Ignore them. Do not face the freezer wall after 2:13 a.m. The PA system may speak. Do not answer. If you hear humming near the bread section, leave the aisle. Do not look back. Clock out by 5:57 a.m. sharp. No exceptions. At first I laughed. Genuinely thought it was a prank. But when I turned to ask Marla about it, she was already gone. I was alone in the break room, and the silence felt heavy. I clocked in at 9:04 p.m., just to be safe. Threw on my apron, adjusted my name tag, and walked out into the store. It felt different now, like the air had shifted. Every aisle seemed longer than it should have been. The lights above flickered more than I remembered. There was no music, no chatter. Just the low hum of electricity and the distant, muffled creak of something moving. I started in produce. Stacking apples. Checking for bruises. Easy work. Mindless. My nerves began to settle. Then, around 2:10 a.m., I heard the freezer doors behind me hiss open. Just the sound of cold air being released. Nothing more. I turned toward the sound. Then I remembered rule number 4. Do not face the freezer wall after 2:13 a.m. I checked my watch. 2:12. I stood there, one hand frozen mid-reach for a Granny Smith apple, heart thumping in my chest. I was still facing the fruit display, but I could feel the cold air licking at the back of my neck. The temperature dropped fast. Too fast. Then came the sound of breathing. Not mine. Not human. Wet. Slow. Right behind me. I squeezed my eyes shut. 2:13 a.m. One more minute. Just one more. A hand brushed my shoulder. Cold. Too cold. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The breathing stopped. Then click, the freezer door closed. I stayed there for a long time. When I finally turned around, the aisle was empty. The freezer doors were shut. No one was there. But there was a handprint on the glass. Not mine. Not human. And it was on the inside. That was my first night at Harlan's Market. I didn't break any rules that night. But I came close. Too close. The first night passed with more boredom than fear. I stocked shelves, kept my head down, and followed the rules posted in the break room. They were printed in bold, red letters, framed like commandments. Most of them seemed strange but harmless. Rule number 4 stood out the most. Do not face the freezer wall after 2:13 a.m. That line stuck in my mind like a splinter. I asked Marla, one of the senior night shift workers, about it during our break. She was a small woman, older, with tired eyes and a voice that sounded like it had spent years whispering secrets. "You don't want to break that one, Carl," she said, sipping lukewarm coffee. "Nothing good comes out of curiosity here." That only made me more curious. Around 2 a.m., I was alone in the frozen foods aisle. The air was sharp, biting cold. My breath came out in pale clouds. The freezer wall ran along the entire back of the store, metal, spotless, with long handles and thick glass revealing stacked bags of frozen peas, pizzas, and microwave dinners. I checked my phone. 2:11 a.m. I stood there, heart thudding, staring at the freezer wall. What could possibly happen? I thought. Maybe it was a prank, or just some superstition passed around to scare new hires. 2:13 a.m. I turned toward the wall. At first, nothing. The usual hum of the coolers. The flicker of fluorescent lights above. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, a tired guy with dark circles under his eyes and a name tag that didn't feel like his yet. But then something shifted. In the reflection, my eyes blinked, but I didn't. I froze. The air grew colder, sharp enough to sting. I watched as my reflection took a step forward, but I hadn't moved. Its expression was different now. The mouth curved slightly at the corners into a grin. That's when I felt the pressure, like someone was standing right behind me. Not touching me, just there. Breathing. I turned around quickly. No one. When I looked back at the glass, the reflection was normal again, mimicking me, blinking when I blinked, scared just like I was. I took 2 steps back. The feeling didn't go away. I rushed out of the aisle and into the back room, nearly tripping over a mop bucket. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was just my imagination, the late hour messing with my head. I'd only been on the job a couple of days. Maybe I was just tired. But as I sat down to catch my breath, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the clipboard by the time clock, right under my name, someone had scribbled in messy handwriting, "You look too long." I didn't sleep after my shift. I sat in my apartment, staring at the wall, jumping at every sound. I didn't know who, or what, had written that message. I didn't want to believe any of it was real. But deep down, I knew something was wrong with that store. And the worst part, it was only my second night. I couldn't sleep after what I saw in the freezer. Every time I closed my eyes, that pale figure stared back at me. Frozen behind the glass, eyes wide, lips curled into a half-smile that didn't match its lifeless eyes. It moved when I moved. Perfectly. Like a reflection, but there was no mirror. Just a wall of ice and frost. The next morning, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror longer than usual. I tried copying the same expression it wore. Tilted my head a little, squinted just slightly. But no matter what I did, I couldn't recreate that exact look. There was something off about it. Unnatural. Like someone trying too hard to look human. I told Marla about it when I got to the store. She didn't even blink. "You looked into the freezer after 2:13, didn't you?" she asked, voice flat. "I didn't mean to," I said. The timer went off, and I just turned around without thinking. She sighed and handed me a can of green beans. "Next time, don't look at it. Just don't." "What was that thing?" "You don't want to know." She walked away without another word. The rest of the shift felt heavier. The store was quiet in a way that made you listen for things you didn't want to hear. I could swear the humming of the lights above had started matching the sound of my breathing. My hands shook when I restocked the freezer. I didn't dare turn around. Later that night, back at the small apartment above the diner where I was renting a room, I caught my reflection doing something strange. I was brushing my teeth. Same routine, nothing weird. But when I bent down to rinse my mouth and looked back up, my reflection was still brushing. Only for a second. Maybe 2. It caught up immediately, mirroring me again perfectly. But I stood there frozen, toothbrush hanging from my mouth, foam dripping onto my chin. My heart pounded. My knees felt weak. I leaned in, nose almost touching the glass. My reflection grinned. Not a wide, toothy grin, just a small one. A twitch of the lips that said, "I see you." I backed away and left the bathroom light on all night. The next day, there was a note stuck to the mirror. A sticky note I swear I didn't put there. It said, "I miss being you." The handwriting looked like mine, but the letters were too straight. Too clean. I stared at it for a full minute before peeling it off and shoving it into the trash. I didn't tell anyone. What could I even say? That night, I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. I couldn't risk seeing, whatever it was again. But something else happened. As I was drifting off to sleep, half-conscious, I heard my own voice whisper from across the room. It said, "Don't forget me again." My eyes snapped open. The room was dark, lit only by the yellowish streetlight outside. My breath caught in my throat. There was no one there. But the towel I'd draped over the mirror was on the floor, neatly folded. And in the mirror, faintly drawn in foggy letters, was a message. "See you at 2:13. I showed up early for my shift that night. Not because I wanted to. I couldn't sleep. My apartment had started making strange noises, creaks that didn't line up with footsteps, whispers behind walls that were too thin for secrets. I figured being in the store was safer than being alone. I was wrong. When I got there, Marla was already waiting by the time clock, her arms crossed, her lips tight. She didn't say anything, just gave me a nod that felt like a warning. I clocked in. Then I saw him. He stood near aisle 9, where the canned beans and dusty ramen cups gathered dust. He was tall, really tall, and thin in a way that made my skin itch. He wore a gray suit, old-fashioned, with a black tie knotted too tight. His shoes were polished, but the floor beneath him looked wet. "Carl," Marla whispered beside me. "That's Andrice, the regional manager." And then she walked away. Fast. I watched her go, confused, but when I turned back to where he stood, he was gone. A chill slid down my back. The lights flickered. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was just tired. I grabbed a box of paper towels and started stocking aisle 3, pretending things were normal. That's when I felt the air shift. Not cold, not warm, just wrong. He was behind me. "You're Carl," a voice said, calm as a quiet lake. I turned. There he was again, standing way too close. His eyes were the first thing I noticed. They weren't eyes, just dark orbs. No whites, no shine, just two endless holes where sight should be. "Yes," I said. My voice cracked. Andrice smiled. "New blood," he said. "Always so eager, so curious." He stepped past me, fingers trailing across the shelves like he was blind. Or maybe pretending to be. He stopped in front of a bag of marshmallows and turned his head just enough for me to see the tight skin pulling across his cheekbones. "I trust you've been following the rules," he asked. I nodded. "I read them every shift. Reading isn't the same as believing." He didn't wait for my answer. He just walked away, straight through the automatic doors of the stockroom, doors that hadn't opened. They just stayed shut, glass and metal, as he phased through them like smoke. I stood frozen, staring at the marshmallow shelf. That's when I remembered the photo. Earlier that day, while organizing the old employee drawer behind the customer service counter, I had found a wrinkled, faded picture stuck between two training manuals. A group photo, smiling faces in green aprons. But one face made my blood go cold. My brother. He had gone missing 2 years ago, vanished without a trace. And now, in this picture, he was smiling, his arm around Marla, name tag gleaming Logan. And standing beside him, Andrice. The same gray suit. The same black tie. Not a single wrinkle more. Not a single day older. I kept the photo in my pocket, just to prove I wasn't crazy. But now I wasn't sure what was worse, being crazy or being right. Later that night, I found Marla by the loading dock, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. "You knew my brother," I said. She flinched. "Didn't look at me. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. He worked here. With you." She took a deep breath, then finally looked up at me. Her eyes were tired. "Broken. He broke a rule," she said. "And the store doesn't forgive." That was all she gave me. That night, I didn't stock shelves. I didn't clean aisles. I just stood in the center of the store, surrounded by flickering lights and the hum of forgotten music playing on a loop. The same song, over and over, soft, slow, and eerily out of tune. Somewhere near the freezer section, I thought I saw a reflection in the glass. Not mine. Logan's. And he was screaming. But no sound came out. The store felt different that night. It had been 2 weeks since I started at Harlan's Market, and I was getting used to the routine. The weird rules, the strange whispers, and the growing unease in my gut had become my new normal. But something gnawed at me. I couldn't stop thinking about the hatch under the produce section, the one that no one ever mentioned. It was small, tucked in the farthest corner, almost hidden behind a stack of crates. But I had seen it, and it bothered me that no one ever talked about it. It was late, around 1:45 a.m. The store was quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above me, casting long, sickly shadows across the empty aisles. I was supposed to be stocking the shelves, but my mind kept drifting back to the hatch. I stood by the stack of boxes, pretending to work, while my eyes kept darting toward the corner. My heart raced a little faster each time I looked. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I walked over, my shoes scuffing against the cold tile floor. The crates stacked high blocked most of the view, but there it was, the faint outline of the hatch. I knelt down, my fingers trembling as I brushed dust from the small, rusted handle. It was locked, but it didn't matter. The key was inside me now, curiosity, fear, and a strange pull I couldn't explain. I checked the area around me. No one was around. The night shift crew was all in the back room, taking their break. I bent down and pulled at the hatch. The lock snapped open with a quick turn, as if it had been waiting for me. It creaked loudly, more than I expected. The staleness of old air hit me in the face, and I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The basement beneath the store had always felt like a rumor, a place people whispered about, but no one ever spoke of directly. I had heard stories from Marla, though she always changed the subject before she could say much. "Don't go down there," she had told me once, eyes wide. "You'll understand once you're here long enough." I took a deep breath and pulled the hatch wide open. A narrow staircase descended into the dark. The smell of dampness and decay floated up, mixing with the musty scent of old boxes. I hesitated, my foot hovering above the first step. What was I doing? Why was I even going down there? But my legs moved before I could stop them. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended. The darkness down there was almost suffocating. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, using the weak flashlight to guide me. The light flickered as I moved down, revealing walls lined with old pipes and shelves filled with forgotten items, dusty cans, boxes of old cleaning supplies, and half-empty bags of flour. It felt like the place had been untouched for decades. At the bottom of the stairs, I froze. A thick metal door stood before me, half hidden in the shadows. It was slightly ajar, as if someone had left it that way. The air around me felt colder, almost like something was watching, waiting. My heartbeat quickened as I stepped forward, my breath shallow in the thick silence. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the room stretched out in front of me, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were lined with old wooden shelves, filled with even older boxes. Some of the boxes were stacked haphazardly, some had been opened, their contents spilled out and forgotten. But that wasn't what caught my attention. On the far side of the room was a table. On it, there were several old photographs and a few yellowed pieces of paper. I walked toward them, my hands shaking as I reached out to pick up the first photograph. It was a group shot of Harlan's Market employees, older than the pictures on the walls upstairs. The faces were blurry, faded with time, but one person stood out. My brother. I gasped, my heart thudding in my chest. There he was, standing in the back row, looking just like I remembered. He had worked here too. But that couldn't be right. I'd never heard about him working here, not once. I turned the photo over, and there, written in thin black ink, was a name. Samuel Mays, night shift supervisor. My breath caught in my throat. Samuel Mays was my brother's full name. What the hell was this? Why was his photo here, hidden in this dusty basement of a store no one seemed to care about? I couldn't think straight. My head spun, my mind racing to make sense of it all. That's when I noticed something else. Beneath the photos were a series of old journals, stacked on a shelf, each one leather-bound and marked with faded writing. The pages looked worn, as if they had been touched by many hands over the years. I pulled one out, my fingers brushing over the fragile pages, and opened it to the first entry. It was written in a familiar hand, but it wasn't my brother's. It was a man's handwriting, sharp and angular. The first sentence sent a chill down my spine. The rules must be followed, or the consequences will be irreversible. The market feeds on those who break them. I stopped reading right there, my blood running cold. This wasn't just some basement of forgotten supplies. It was a tomb, a place where something ancient had been kept alive by the store's twisted rules. The very rules I had been warned to follow. I slammed the journal shut, my mind racing. What had happened to my brother? Was he part of this? Why had they kept this hidden from me? The door behind me creaked, and I whipped around, convinced something, or someone was watching me. I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed the journal, shoved it in my bag, and ran back up the stairs, locking the hatch behind me. The store felt colder, darker, more oppressive. The rules were real. I had just uncovered a terrifying part of the puzzle, and now I knew I couldn't leave. Not without knowing everything. I knew something wasn't right when I walked into Harlan's Market that evening. The usual silence in the store felt different. There was a heaviness to the air, thick and stifling, like the entire building was holding its breath. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just nerves. After all, tonight was my last shift. I was planning to walk out the door, pack up, and leave this place behind for good. I had thought about it all day. No more weird rules, no more strange figures hiding in the corners of the aisles, no more voices whispering from the PA. I just wanted to get out, but there was something else, something deep inside me, that kept me rooted to the spot. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting harsh shadows across the linoleum floor. It felt colder than usual, even though the heat was on. I glanced around the store, my eyes landing on the freezer at the far end of the aisle. The one with the cracked glass. I had never really understood why that freezer felt like a magnet for my attention. I had always avoided looking directly at it. But tonight, something pulled me towards it. I stood there for a moment, staring at the glass, half wondering if the rules had been enough to protect me. Maybe if I just did what they said, stayed away from that wall, followed the guidelines, I would make it out of this place. But then a whisper. It wasn't on the PA system. It came from behind me, soft, faint, like a breath brushing my ear. My heart skipped, and I froze. Carl. My name. The voice was calm, too familiar. I spun around quickly, but there was nothing there. The store was empty, just the distant hum of the freezer in the back. I shook my head, trying to brush it off. Just my imagination. I started to turn back toward the aisle, but something caught my eye, movement, just behind the freezer door. I squinted, unsure of what I had seen. Was that a shadow? A figure? Or had I finally lost my mind? I had to know. Without thinking, I walked toward it, drawn by the pull of something I couldn't explain. My feet moved on their own, taking me closer and closer to the freezer. As I stepped past the last row of shelves, I glanced at the clock. 2:12 a.m. 1 minute. One more minute before the curse, before I broke rule number 4. I reached the freezer door, my hand hovering over the handle. I had to stop, but I couldn't. Something inside me, something dark and insistent, urged me to keep going. I grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. The cold hit me like a slap to the face. My breath came out in visible puffs, sharp and fast. I stepped inside, my boots clicking against the frozen floor. And then I saw it. At the far end of the freezer, the wall, the one I'd always been warned not to face, was covered in a thick layer of ice. Frozen patterns, swirling and shifting in ways that made no sense, like something was trying to escape. And then I saw it. A figure standing against the wall, frozen in place. It was me. My own face, twisted and distorted in the ice. Its eyes were wide open, staring at me with a hunger I couldn't describe. I froze. My mind couldn't catch up with what I was seeing. How was this possible? I reached out, unable to look away from my frozen doppelganger. The figure's lips curled into a twisted smile, one that was too wide, too cruel. And then the voice, so close to my ear it made my skin crawl. You shouldn't have come back, Carl. I stumbled back, my pulse racing. What was this? What had I done? Suddenly, I felt the ice shift behind me. Something cold, impossibly cold, brushed against my neck. I whirled around, but there was nothing there. No figure. No shadow. Just the wall of ice, pulsing with a low, menacing hum. Leave, the voice whispered, but this time, it wasn't the figure in the ice speaking. It was coming from everywhere, echoing from the walls, the floors, the very air around me. I didn't know what to do. Should I run? Should I scream? But I couldn't move. My feet were stuck to the frozen floor, like the ice had somehow seeped into my bones. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, but the screen flickered and went black. And then I heard it, the sound that had been missing from all of this. A low, guttural growl, coming from behind the freezer door. I turned, my heart pounding in my chest, and saw the figure emerging from the shadows. It wasn't my reflection anymore. No, it was something far worse. And then the intercom crackled to life. A soft, chilling voice echoed through the store. You've broken the rules, Carl. There's no going back. I didn't even hear the freezer door slam shut. All I could hear was the echo of my own name, whispered through the store. And then nothing. The silence of Harlan's Market was suffocating. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, ragged and heavy, as the blackness swallowed the aisles around me. The faint hum of the overhead lights buzzed, but it felt distant, like it was coming from somewhere I couldn't reach. I had destroyed the intercom. Or at least, that's what I thought I'd done. I tore the wires out of the walls, yanked at the old speakers, but there was something deeper, something ancient, still echoing through the store. I couldn't escape it. No matter how far I ran, it always followed. The whispers, soft and cold, always calling my name. But that night, it was different. There was no whispering. No faint voice creeping over the PA system. The stillness pressed down on me, thicker than the fog outside. Every shadow seemed to crawl, twisting into unnatural shapes, stretching with every flicker of light. I stood frozen in the middle of the store, the black aisles stretching before me like a maze, and I knew, just knew, that something was coming for me. My footsteps echoed in the empty hall. I walked past the rows of food, all neatly stacked, perfectly arranged, and yet something felt wrong about it all. It was like the shelves were too perfect, too still, as if they were waiting too. Then I saw it. At the end of aisle 5, just where the lights barely touched, there was a figure. Not human. No, not anymore. It was too tall, too thin, and the shadows clung to it like a cloak. It wasn't standing still. It was moving, inch by inch, getting closer. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. This was it. And then, just as I thought I might collapse under the weight of it, the intercom buzzed to life. But it wasn't the usual whisper. No, this time it was a voice, a familiar voice. "Carl," it said in a tone so sweet, so comforting. But I knew better now. I knew what it was. It wasn't a voice to trust. It wasn't my voice anymore. The voice called again. "Carl, you've done so well. Don't you want to know the truth?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My legs were like stone, my body frozen in place. The figure in aisle 5 took another step forward, its long limbs moving unnaturally, like it wasn't quite human, or maybe it was something else entirely. I could feel its eyes on me, even though I couldn't see them. They were there, hidden in the shadows, watching. Waiting. I reached for the microphone on the counter, my hand shaking as I grabbed it. It felt cold. So cold. Like it had been waiting for me to touch it. I knew what I had to do. I leaned in close and whispered into the mic, my voice trembling with fear. "I hear you. I know what you want." For a moment, the store seemed to hold its breath. Then the voice came again, but this time it was different. "You've broken the rules, Carl. You were supposed to obey. You were supposed to follow. And now, you will be part of us. Forever." I stumbled back, my eyes searching for the exit. There was no way out. The aisles stretched on, like an endless tunnel. I wanted to run, to flee, but my feet wouldn't move. I couldn't escape the pull of the store. The pull of the curse. I reached for the microphone again. This time I didn't hesitate. I had to do this. For everyone who had come before me. For the ones who had never left. "Listen to me," I said, my voice steady despite the terror crawling up my spine. "This is my final broadcast. The last thing you'll hear." There was a pause. A long, deafening silence. Then the voice, soft, almost kind, came again. "Goodbye, Carl." The lights flickered. The shadow in aisle 5 moved closer. I could feel it. The cold, the darkness, the weight of it pressing in on me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I had broken the rules. I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And now it was too late. The store, the voices, the whispers, they were all part of it. And I was part of them, too. The last thing I heard before the lights went out completely was the sound of the freezer door closing with a sharp click. The darkness consumed everything, and I, Carl Mays, was no longer alone.